Welcome to Rise Over Run. This is Piers Dormeyer. Since this is the first episode of this project, I felt like I'd give you a little bit of a reason why I'm doing this, why this exists in the first place. Really boils down to this is a project I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it kind of comes down to just one question that I've been asking for nearly 2 decades now that I've been in the roofing industry. And that question is how did you get into this business in the first place? It's a really interesting question, and you can ask it to just about anybody in our space, be it a contractor or a supplier or really anybody who's connected to our business. The one thing you're almost always guaranteed of is that the answer is going to be pretty interesting. There's a lot of easier ways to make a buck in this world than be a roofing contractor, for example. There's almost always a great story there. So I think one of my missions here was to start to try and tell some of those stories and maybe just take a stab at showing what great looks like in our business. Maybe that's a way that we can highlight the best and maybe draw others into our community. I think hopefully it becomes maybe a launch pad for people to think of the business as a way of doing bigger things. That's really my mission here. So to jump into it, my first guest on the show, thank you, Charles, for doing it. My first guest is a guy who really personifies mission. I think we met through NRCA, and when the Ronald McDonald House Charity Initiative was getting off the ground. Just really enjoy working with you. Love the passion, and I wanted to get out there and tell your story. So how did you get into the business? Start from the top.
Wow. So, well, it's been 31 years almost. Antis Roofing's been alive, and I'm the founder. But it started, the reason it started is I'm originally from a logging town in Oregon called Myrtle Creek, population 3,000. And it was the timber capital of the world when I was little, but every man that I knew that I looked up to worked with his hands. And, it was a lifetime of toil, but that men were men, and that's all I knew. And so I labored. I worked in the woods. I worked in the mills. Didn't work on roofing then, but I was a laborer. And so after I went to college and I was recruited to sell in Southern California, I went down to sell, and I was knocking on doors selling insulation. It's a long story. I don't need to get into that part, but I'm knocking on doors, and I sold this family, and it was this family that I really connected with. In fact, they were a deaf family. So I was signing and I was writing things down, and I sold them, and I went back the next day to pick up the check for this company I worked for. And they wouldn't speak to me. They wouldn't answer. I saw them in there, wouldn't answer the door. And as I was wondering what was going on, the neighbor walked over and asked me to leave. And I asked why. And she said, because you took advantage of this family. And I said, how? And she said, you sold them something that isn't possibly going to give them the relief you say and energy savings. And I looked at what she said, and I thought, I think she might be right. And I quit. And so I quit. There I was in Southern California, Simi Valley area. 1984 Summer Olympics are about ready to get going, and I didn't have a job, and I looked for a job, and where I saw in my vision was working with your hands, and the only company that I heard was a roofing company that needed work, and so I gave that guy a call. That's how this Oregon logger boy ended up being in the roofing industry, really at the age of 21.
No doubt. You never did any lumberjack games or anything like that? You shimmied up a tree
that's a great question, because when I was telling you my idealized man, it was a logger. It was very Paul Bunyan-ish. Yes, because I watched those games on TV, because that mattered to me, because I knew people that were expert loggers, and they were the people we really looked up to. And also we knew people all of us knew people who were deceased from that trade. It was, labor where I grew up was an intense thing. It was, I'm not saying that those of us that are not risking our lives every day don't have important jobs, but I do really admire the labor of those that roofers like today that go out and take risks so that we can be safe and dry. So I think it starts with my respect toward the labor of the people I looked up to as a kid. Gosh, I can't believe sometimes where I get this emotion. But that's a good question. I thought that's
Yeah,
so
I mean,
true,
I could
man.
go
It's
on.
like
I could.
my idealized man as a child is a cross between John Wayne and Paul Bunyan. And that's kind of I'm not really that guy today, but I might try to dress like it sometimes.
Yeah, I'm telling you that plays. That seriously plays. So you go from Oregon. Uh, logging to Southern California. How did that switch happen?
Well, so I grew up Mormon. I'm no longer Mormon, I call myself a foreman. But it's my parents' religion, so no, everything's cool. I respect their religion. That's great. I just speak a different language today, living in California. But coming here was as a result of, I went on a Mormon mission to Thailand, which was way cool. And because it was a foreign land, it was more of a humanitarian mission, and that was really cool. But when I came back, I went to BYU, and that's where I was recruited to go sell in Southern California. And the reason why is BYU underclassmen are recruited more than any other university because of that return missionary experience, because these guys have been out knocking on doors for 2 years, guys and girls, knocking on doors for 2 years. They come back. It's a great group of hardworking 80-hour-a-week salespeople. I mean, I thought, these guys really think I'm smart, but no, I was a good demographic to pick from.
No, the Mormon church, the Mormon faith can crank out some door-to-door salespeople like you read about. It is a real thing. It is a real thing. So okay. So you find yourself in Southern California. You find yourself in the roofing business. Way fast forward. I go visit Charles's office. It's more like a Silicon Valley tech setup than any roofing contractor office that I've ever seen. So, I mean, you've got that open floor plan. You've got an entirely different vibe. How did that all come about?
I'll give you a tour right now if you want it. I'll just take you on a zip tour anytime. But I'm a visionary. I didn't know what that word was really 10 years ago, but I eventually adopted it through assessments and stuff. And so I'm a visionary that really can't help but see things in its best possible way. Sometimes I don't mean to, but I exaggerate because I'm seeing the glass half full. And if somebody sees it half empty and half full, sometimes there's a gap there. But sometimes it shows I'm very visual. We're doing this in front of my wall of purpose, or whatever you want to call it, my wall of madness or wall of purpose. I like to be expressive. I believe that our animal brains need to see facial expression and need to see messaging, simple messaging. And so I believe that when we expose ourselves to all these little influences, everything matters. And so our space, like the Google campus, who says we can't do it in the roofing industry? It was awkward at first. But you know what? I don't even hear like F-bombs out there anymore like I used to. Like, what the fuck are you doing? If I do hear an F-bomb, you know what I hear? It's like, I'm so fucking happy. That's the F-bomb I hear today. Or something like, they're saying it for emphasis, not in a curse and not at somebody's expense. And so there's a shift here. And I don't know why it's working, but because I can't do it all. I only do a part of it. But what's working is we attract the best people and we allow them to fail and we try. And this is what it looks like today. It's not closed, it's open. It encourages self-expression. And, like right now, surviving in this culture of this pandemic, it's the only way we can do it is to divide. And, I have my director of finance, who's very focused on signing up for everything we can to get government help to look at everything, compare what other businesses are doing. I have my director over my culture and my admin, and she's very specifically keeping us ahead and safe and with the messaging. And then I have my director of sales and that's Susan DeGrassi, now Aaron Antis over sales. I see him diving into being innovative and helpful to the client. And my job in this is shifting to keep the ballast and keep us steady. And it's an incredible transition right now when you have the team. I forgot what the question was. I didn't know where we were going there.
No, all good. So I wanted to get to you. I want you to tell that story about how this partnership with Ronald McDonald House Charities came about, how that whole thing exploded the way it did. I'm super, you know where I sit on this, but I think it needs to get told a little bit. I'm super bullish on it. But before you get into that, you've built your entire sales and marketing, maybe not your entire sales and marketing approach around this idea of changing lives, saving lives. Every nail matters, working with the various nonprofits you work for to kind of create, really, if you want to talk about sustainable, start giving stuff away and start really being about it. Can you talk a little bit about how that's impacted the business and how you've kind of evolved that way?
Yeah. I think there's a change in the business and there's a change in me, because I think that philanthropy or giving, like keeping folks dry. Let's get down to what many roofers have. It's not just me. I bet everyone listening to this has a similar condition. A roofer that cares about his community just can't let somebody have a leaky roof just because they don't have the money to pay. Countless stories out there that we give this stuff away. And so I think that we didn't mean to maybe, but when we're there and we see there's a need, we just can't walk away. And I think that that's something that came about early in my history. And even though I tried to ignore it and keep it down, it eventually became part of who we were. And I'll tell it more quickly than normal because I feel like I'm being really wordy this morning. But, it started 30 years ago, right after we started our business, when I was desperate for every call. I was so desperate, I put one week, the work was putting weather stripping on the home bedroom converted to be an office so they wouldn't hear my daughter cry if I got a call. And I just had the ability to repair what leaked from rain. That was my one thing. I didn't have a crew yet. And I got a call from a lady who had leaks in every room. So I was super excited. I'm driving out there. I'm gonna make money. And I'm noticing as I'm getting closer to the home that they're getting smaller and the streets are getting more disheveled and there's see graffiti. And until finally I turn on the street where the home would be and I look and I just see like dead grass. And I go up to the door anyway, because, you got to show up. That's one of those things Dad taught me and always. And I knock on the door and then three things happened quickly that changed everything looking back. And the first was this woman answers the door with this really tired expression. Like, I don't know what that means. Before I can say anything, I'm hit with a wave of mildew like this, like I've never smelt before. And imagining that fright feeling that causes, I was starting to recoil. But before I could recoil, I look down and I see a 6-year-old blonde-haired girl with an ear-to-ear smile in contrast to her mom and my expression. And it was just disarming. And I had no choice because she pulled me in to this living room and I followed her. And the mom looked at me, I looked back at the mom, and then she goes into this, like an undersized hallway until finally she turns right into her room. And I know it's her room because she smiles to me and she points to this My Little Pony poster on the wall. But as I watch her do that, my eyes are drawn down and I see 4 mattresses and this disheveled bedding with mold on it. And then it was like, wow. So that was just like an awful moment. I said I was going to tell this quickly, but there's something that's sort of reverent about this story. And I guess I can't brush it quickly because that was a really tough moment. At that moment right there, when that happened, that girl was really cute, but it was like, Piers, you could have, just like you were ripping something out of me because I needed to go home to make money for my family. There was no money here. And this little girl represented a threat to my own security. But then that mom walked up. The mom walks back in the room, and it bothers me that it wasn't the little girl's smile, but that mom walked back in the room, and I saw that fear, and I saw that pain, and it's something, I just knew more than her, at least I could. And so right then I said, I'm going to take care of your roof. And I do remember almost wishing I hadn't said it after I said it, that commitment. Like, how? I didn't know. I wondered, can I, will I? And then I went up on the roof, and they needed a whole new roof. And so I had to really scrap to get that roof. I had to get a bunch of volunteers, but we put a roof on that house, and that family stayed in it. They became like friendly. I saw some of them for a while, and I saw some of the volunteers, and it was always this high five moment. And looking back, that's before I knew what culture was, but that's what my culture is today, is that high five, that together, man, look what we did together, and that's what so lucky I got a piece of that my first year. And it didn't, we haven't been that company. We didn't know what it was for 20 years, but we just couldn't let anyone have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. And so that's something that I think Antis today has learned, that we must talk about it. It's not that we're talking about it to say, like I used to think it was, like, oh, look at me, I am so thoughtful. No, it's like, dude, this is fun. We're happy. And if we talk about it, you can do it, and your community will benefit, and our trade will benefit, and your company will benefit, and your people will benefit, and your families will benefit, and these nonprofits will benefit, and things that you love will benefit. That's what I'm really lucky. And Antis Roofing is really lucky. We realize that we are blessed, and we are so grateful to be a little bit of a steward of corporate social responsibility in the roofing industry. Me, I'm so fortunate for the last 3 years. In fact, I haven't had a chance to express this, and if you'll let me, I've been able to serve on the National Roofing Contractors Association Board of Directors the last 3 years. And my term expires at the end of this month, or by the beginning of May. And I haven't thought about it. I haven't given it. I have thought about it, but I keep pushing it off because I feel a little melancholy, if that's the word, because I'm going to miss that. Now, I'm still going to be involved in the committees, and I know they'll be considered again, or I hope that I'm considered again next time. I don't know how long you term out for, but suddenly I'm going to pay attention because it's been such an honor to serve on the board of the NRCA, and as it is an honor to serve with you at the Alliance, on the board of the Roofing Alliance. I mean, these people are the best people. They are the best people, and together, man, we have such a powerful ability to move the dial in our communities and in our industry, and for people in general, and it's really powerful. So thank you for letting me go off.
I think that you made a good point, and when you went to that house and you saw that little girl, and I think everybody gets those moments in their life. They come around, and sometimes you might not even know they're there, and you don't pay attention to it. You just put your head down because you're distracted with something else. But it's what you do, and it's when you stop and you be present, and you make one decision versus the other, and it changes your entire life. I think, and some are bigger moments than others, I think, right?
Oh yeah.
But I believe everybody has them, and it becomes that choice point of which way you're going to go. I think that, one of the ones for me was when I decided to get involved with, like you mentioned, NRCA and the Alliance, right? It just started taking me down a path that I wasn't
How
looking
long ago
for,
was that when you got involved,
right?
Pierce? How long ago was it when
Probably
you got involved?
probably 3-4 years.
About the same.
But you start watching these damn videos that RMHC put out, you're like crying in front of like 200 roofers, right?
Were you
and
there?
Then you're like, it's just
Were you
like,
there in San Diego?
Was I in San? Yeah, I was in Coronado.
Remember when we voted it in? When
Yeah.
they showed that film and we all started crying about it?
I know.
I was trying so hard not to jerk up.
I know. I'm like, I'm like big pussy. But then everybody else is too. So you're just like, oh, whatever, good company. But I think those moments come, and it's like, You either do it or you don't do it. But sometimes if you go down that road, you take that proverbial matrix blue pill versus red pill. I don't know which one takes you to the matrix or which one doesn't, but it can change your life. It might not look the same after that. And a lot of times in a really good way, you know. But
there is real magic, or whatever you want to call it, when you just start. I don't like to talk about this too much, but it's like that abundance theory. You just kind of act like there's enough, or here's a commitment that's tangible that sounds scary. If you can make this commitment in your business that you'll err on the side of generosity with all your stakeholders, that's a really sounds dangerous, because I got to save a little here and give a little there. I think that's a tangible way that a baby boomer can attempt at the abundance theory, because that's baby boomers can identify with that. Okay, I guess my life's taught me that I can afford to say that I won't ever cheat anybody. I'll always err on the side of generosity. I think that is just a great place to be right now, because today, in a tangible way, what that means is your employees will stay. In the roofing industry, gosh, Bill Good taught me when he was in our CEO, and I know last time I checked the numbers, they were still right before COVID-19, that the attrition rate in the roofing industry by people leaving individual companies is 54%. And at Antis Roofing, the last 2 years we tracked before this, we were a 90%. And what does that do to our roofs? I mean, our roofs, and I'm not trying to compare my roofs are better than his roofs. I get it. We're trying to do the best we can, all of us. But when you keep the same employees, and when they believe that they're working towards purpose, they know that they're providing roofing for families that need it. I mean, they're just going to put that nail in just right. And that's why we say every nail matters, because it does, whether it's the parts in the roof or it's the people. And thank you for bringing that up earlier. That slogan that we loved to use is every nail matters.
Yeah, no, it's a big one. So with everything that you're going, how did you get hooked up with Ronald McDonald, and how did we get from San Diego, where it was like, hey, it'd be a pretty cool idea if a bunch of roofers could get together and maybe do a few repairs on a Ronald McDonald house once in a while, to having every house in the United States adopted by contractors? How did we get from A to Z?
Well, there's a few stories, but I can't be believed until I align with why it's my story. And so I have to tell my family story, and I'll try not to be too long. But my wife, Dawn, and I are very much in love, and we've been together the last decade. We got married 6 years ago, and we decided to have children. And that was a big decision for me at 50 years old. And I'm gonna skip to the chase. I have very healthy 5-year-old twins today, Charlie and Gracie. But back then, they were in her belly, and she was big, and we just did our baby moon. And baby moon's that little light before things get serious. You go off with your spouse, and I didn't know what it was before. So
I did it, yeah.
I was thinking of your listeners and a few of the men, the friends of mine that I've had to explain it to. So we go to Palm Springs, we come back, and then she feels ill. We call the doctor. We've already named them, Charlie and Gracie, they're inside her. And then the doctor says, I think she has preeclampsia. Come to the hospital. And that was a really quiet evening as I Googled preeclampsia. And it's not good. The baby's going to need to come out. It looks that way. So we go to the hospital the next day, and we're assigned to a room with 4 doctors for Charlie, Gracie, Dawn, and me. And I go inside, and I watch Charlie come out first. And he looks like his grandpa. And, I'm not trying to be funny. No, I'm not. I wasn't trying to be funny. And I only laugh now because he's so healthy. But I was shocked because he didn't look like that fat baby boy. He looked shriveled and tiny. And then Gracie came out, and Gracie she wasn't breathing, and it wasn't normal not breathing. It was tubes in, and there, there's like, there would be a siren, there'd be a siren. And next thing we know, I'm in NICU. Dawn's in a room, and the babies are in an incubator. And we're finally able to see them when we go into a room, and there's 60 incubators hooked up and bells and whistles going off. And anybody that's ever spent time in NICU knows that every time you hear a bell go off, you think you're losing your own kid, whether it's your bell or not. And it's traumatic. And this is what I learned. Those CHOC, Children's Hospital Orange County nurses, when they were so awesome, they all told us little different ways as they helped us, but they told us this is what we know. Dawn and Charles, if you come in every day and you take off your shirts and you lay Charlie and Gracie on your naked chest for 2 hours twice a day, I promise you that's their best chance at recovery. And so when a parent hears that, when you go to this traumatic state of suddenly a happy pregnancy to, oh my God, what's happening to our family? I mean, that was like, it was like hope. And so we went to that hospital every day back and forth, and it was a quiet drive because we were concerned. We didn't know what to expect. And we started doing that skin on skin. And this is when I had my brush with Ronald McDonald House, because they were there. There was this little, like children's blocks type decorative room right next to Children's Hospital. And every day I thought, and I'm not in the mood to talk. My beard was bigger then. I used it as a shield, and I walked in. I didn't want to talk. And there was a lady named Susan who worked at that. And Susan would nod at me. And then one day she talked to me a little bit, and I didn't want anything from her, because if I took anything from Susan, I was going to belong to this club of families with sick kids, and I didn't want any part of that group. I mean, that's not what I thought, but that's, looking back, it was my protection. And then one day I go in because I was late. I had driven by myself. My wife was already there. She had Gracie on her chest. She's like, "Where are you?" I'm coming in, and I have, of all days, chronic heartburn. And this is my story, man. I have chronic heartburn. And it's so bad, I'm not going to be able to do my skin on skin with Charlie. And I know it's not, and I'm frustrated. I don't know what to do. And I walk into that, as I'm walking to Chalk Mission Hospital in Mission Viejo, I look over and I see the Ronald McDonald Station, and Susan or nobody's there. And I look down and I see a little green Nature Valley granola bar like they started making about 40 years ago. And in my mind, I thought, I'm going to steal that bar. And it was kind of like a steal, because I didn't want to owe this club anything. And I grabbed that bar and I ate it.
That's pretty low, man. It's low.
But that's how it was. But this is the cool thing, Pierce, because I don't remember what happened. You know how memory is. But I remember about an hour later, laying on that chair in NICU with, all those babies in that NICU. And I remember Charlie on my chest. And I remember just this feeling of like, no more stomach pain. And I'm doing my thing for Charlie, so he's going to be okay. And that's, when I started to feel that gratitude. It didn't really connect in me until Susan Kenny, another Ronald McDonald associate, met me after I spoke a year or two later. And that's when they invited me to get involved. And that's when I got involved in Ronald McDonald House. It was several years ago, after the kids were born, after they're fully recovered. And the first thing I did when they brought me was, I said, "Oh, I get it. We keep the families close. If we keep the families close, it's the best chance for the kids to heal." And so I wanted to get involved. I joined the board. And then I discovered, oh my gosh, we could really help you guys if we not only keep the families close, but if we can guarantee that we can keep them safe and dry. And that's how the roofing initiative, I'm really big into marketing. I know that the message has to work with the public and with your stakeholders for it to work. So, I noticed after years of giving all the Habitat roofs, and it's a great brand recognition. It's a great partnership. And but I noticed with Ronald McDonald House, just the way people lit up. And I noticed that the way our own people lit up, because everybody's had sick kids, and we all, people that I love, think it's unimaginable to ignore sick kids. So it just resonates. And so what we did is we noticed that we all felt really good about keeping those families safe, dry, and close. And so there's another story really quick going on. I'm just getting involved in the NRCA. Bill Good and I are becoming great buddies. We both have these stories of big-heartedness and of friends of ours. And we start talking, and Bill's asking me, what can we do to lift the brand of the roofing industry? Because there's a 54% attrition rate, and because all these contractors go out of business. And I said, I know, let's donate all the Habitat roofs, because we've donated them all in Orange County for 10 years. And Bill very wisely said that won't work. And so I gave him like a dozen ideas, and I think he was getting sick of ideas in my mind. And finally, one day, it just dawned on me, hey, we're keeping the Ronald McDonald safe and dry. And I asked the local rep, how many are there in the country? And there's 165. I go, that's a doable number. And so I pitched it, and it was Bill Good and, so many Rod Petrick, Daryl, Monica. There's so many amazing people that did so much. I don't want to mention the names, not, let alone Allison LaValle and Bennett Judd. I mean, all these amazing people in the NRCA that they just shepherded this, and they called, and Bill called 200 people. And this is the most amazing statistic that it's almost unbelievable. I'm sure he could be wrong off by 1%, but he said he called 200 roofing professional companies, both, contractors and suppliers and distributors, and all three. And he said that of all the 200 he talked to, only one company said no. Now that's significant. Doesn't mean they're all helping, because the opportunity wasn't right there for all of them. Mm-hmm. But we covered 165 houses as an industry, and that's how close we are. That's how tightly knit the hands that protect everything in this country that we love are. We are tightly knit now, and today's leadership has transcended, as you know, from amazing big-hearted Bill Good to amazing big-hearted and connected Reed Ribble, who inspires us and gives us goosebumps still today. And we are doing so much more in education, in advocacy, and in lifting and building our communities. And we're finally realizing as an industry, as a trade, that by advocating and telling our stories, that so much more good will occur for our people and our communities. And so that's why you and I know each other. We met there, and we were both there at that meeting when we were trying not to show our emotion. And it's funny, I show my emotion so much more since that day. Since that time is when if you go back to me being taped more than 3 years ago, I don't think there's anything on record of me ever tearing up. And now I can't get through a day without showing my emotion. And I think that's what there's the real man of my childhood. He's a cross between that logger and cowboy. And I'm not trying to leave women out. I'm just talking on one category here, but he's also got a big heart, and he's also, compassionate and empathetic. And there's a happy place. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing, because I get to be that guy today. I get to be the best version of myself. In other words, I get to be a little bit, I can dress like this big thick shirt to make me look like I worked out a little more than I did, but also I get to be this soft-hearted guy. And I love that about our industry. We seem to epitomize the best of my childhood idealization of a man. And then we have these women in the industry that are really making us gel right now. So I was getting caught up into my own reflection. I wasn't trying to look at, I love the gender equality in the roofing industry because of National Women in Roofing. And just making sure that I don't get missing. So if you edit anything, you got to put that part back in.
No, great. Well, I'll lighten it up. I mean, what's next? What's next for Antis? Where are you headed? What are you working on?
Well, I mean, right now there's just, right now, everything that we are working on is up for review, because we're going to walk into I think the most adaptive period of business in our lifetimes in general, let alone the roofing industry, which is already going through massive change due to lack of labor and uptick in technology. And so I think that right now, I think when I'm trying to be curious, I'm trying to teach failure is a good thing. I'm trying to teach, a higher level of authenticity in a company. I'm trying to teach optimism in a company, even when our humility must be there as we look around and realize that there's going to be a new normal, and probably there'll be some withouts for everyone. And I'm not trying to be a pessimist, because I'm very much an optimist, but I have to look at all sides. So we're preparing for multiple economies right now, not knowing what's going to occur. And that means we have to be super adaptive. So we're looking at all of our technology, and I can't tell you right now which apps and stuff's working better, because we're so much into this new play. But because we were so invested in technology pre-COVID, we are, fully remote. Like if I take you out and into the hall, into this Google type campus we have in this 7,000 square foot area, you'd normally see 30 people. You don't see but maybe one or two. There's usually 4 people here in this 20,000 square foot area. So we're really testing apps. We're really testing technology right now as a must play, not as a play thing. And that's exciting to me. We were prepared for a drought this year, so that makes us prepared for this. It means that we can still invest in our people during this super slippery yet opportunistic period. And we believe that the roofing companies that will be the strongest won't necessarily grow in size, not knowing what's ahead, but they will grow in market share because they're trying and they're visible. Marketing will continue to be a spend here, even though it's scary. We'll continue to invest in what works. I had a strong reminder after I saw a podcast a couple of days ago. This happened 2 weeks ago during the peak of COVID fear here in Southern California, and my Nick, the pool guy, my brand new pool guy, shows up. He's doing the spa, and I'm just like, oh, and I walk kind of out in the back patio because it was dinner time, and he didn't quite catch my glance, and it kind of was understood right then. Socially, we didn't know where to be, and Nick says hello, and I said, hey, Nick, and this guy. The funny thing is I didn't really have a thought of him. He'd only been my spot guy for 6 months. I didn't know him that good. But on that day, he said, Charles, I said, yeah. He goes, I was thinking about your kids and what it must be like for them right now. And it got my attention, because I went from like, what's he doing here to like, huh? And he goes, I got something for him. And he pulled out a little inner tube and a beach ball that he went out and bought. And he goes, it must be hard not being around their friends. So maybe you can enjoy this in the spa. And, it really touched me. And now, that guy's the best spa guy I've ever had. He is overnight, and that's what happens. And that's why we do what we do. But marketing, let's get to marketing. And Jesus. I brought that up because I was concerned about marketing. Man, now's the time that you spend on your customers. Thanks, Nick, for teaching me that. We're developing something as a result of you that I just approved yesterday that we're sending out to every home we touch right now.
Nick's got a truck full of that gear in his he hit everybody on your street. Just that was 3 times enough.
Nick, he reminds me of you because that's probably true.
Oh, nice slam there. Appreciate that. No, it sounds good. Well, I'll start wrapping it up, but before I do, give me a war story. Go back. Give me one that like blew up on you bad, deal you blew, job went south, something that you preferably can laugh about. I don't need you balling for the 4th time.
I mean, I could tell you that the first repair I ever did for my boss, I backwards lapped the coping so it would leak, and I couldn't see it. And he came up and he kind of teased me about it. That's why I became great at repairs. But I got to go to something that was more humiliating for me that, I can tell you about some major big jobs I effed up and had to dump hundreds of thousands of dollars in to fix. That's how I learned to do it right. But this is a better one for where we've been. And that's going back a little further and how I got to know Bill Good. And I went to Western States trade show in Las Vegas about 5 years ago. And I was invited by a major manufacturer to dine with them and talk about some kind of exclusive opportunity, And so I went there just for that. I sent another employee to do something else. And then I got there. And when I got there, I realized this other employee didn't really do what he was supposed to do. So it was a total wasted spend. And no one will know who that is. So that's not easy to trace. So I don't like ever saying a story that slams anybody. So, but the real slam is on myself because I go to this meeting. The only reason I'd gone to Vegas, I walk into the meeting, I make eye contact with the rep that invited me, and I watched his eyes say, oh shit. His eyes said it, and I thought, great. He was dining with one of my number one competitors. And I have no hard feelings for my competitor. I mean, actually we laughed about it with him later, but I felt sorry for the rep, but I had wasted this whole show. I had wasted everything. I wanted to bring out the best in roofing. I'm donating all these roofs. I feel like they must have in common with other roofers, but I don't know any roofers that are doing what I'm doing and what we're doing. And I feel so isolated. And I came back to my team and I said, you know what? I was humiliated. This is what happened. I don't want that to ever happen again. The next time we go to a show, how do I make sure there's more value? And I think I had met Daryl from Data Forma. And Daryl had kind of told me about the Roofing Alliance and some people. And I said, how do I meet all these people? And he said, come early to the show in Orlando that year. Come early to the show and let's go on a build. And there'll be a build. We're going to go on, it's not Habitat, it's Rebuilding Orlando. And then you'll meet the people. I thought, that's brilliant. And I showed up a day earlier to this show to go spend the day donating my time in rebuilding 3 homes. And that is the best decision I've ever made in business, because I decided to put more in, because if there's people here in this industry, they'll be at this build. And you know what? I met Heidi Ellsworth that day, and look how she's connected. And she's founder National Women Roofing, one of the co-founders of RT3. She is really doing a lot for our industry in a lot of ways. And that's where I met Jennifer, who's now I think the president of National Women Roofing. I also met all these other people. I don't want to drop names because I suck at that and I'll leave people out. But I was brought that night to the Roofing Alliance meeting where I may have met you. I don't know, Pierce, if we met then or not till later, but I met Bill Good and I met all these people that are so giving. And suddenly I went from feeling, like isolated and, sorry, this isn't for you, to come here. Let's do more together. In fact, these people expanded my brain, because I never realized we could do so much until I saw the vision of Bill Good and the Alliance people and those people that work to make it happen in the NRCA and the Alliance. And so my story is that it went from like, oh my God, I've wasted time. I'm not making any traction. I don't know the people who even get me. And suddenly now I'm connected and I'm super happy and my people feel connected. And we believe that everything we do, we can share and we can help build a better roofing community with better relationships with the community. And that's what we strive to do today. And I'm sorry that I made a story of a failure into a story of triumph.
Yeah.
That sounds really arrogant on my part, but I think that was my biggest disappointment. I was so humiliated. And now I'm so proud to be aligned with this family of people that are really together in so many ways in advocating, educating, and in taking care of the community.
Yeah, you just did that, interview question where it's, what do you need to work on? And the person's like, well, I'm just such a perfectionist. It has to be just right. You're like,
yeah.
All right, Paul.
Thanks.
You just
I hope it doesn't come off that way, but
well, no.
Okay.
No, it's all good. All right, I've taken up a ton of your time, but just what are you reading right now? Anything to recommend?
So, I'm really not reading a lot. Like I got a book, I get this book called Max Out Your Life from a friend of mine, a guy I know online, and Jeremy Wright. And there's quotes in it. And I read little bits of stuff that is very positive. Like if you want to know what I'm into, it's like that Jen Sincero author. She wrote a book called You Are a Badass. And it's basically just reframing the way you think things work. And so I have a habit, because of these things that I read, to try to only say everything in a positive language. In other words, I don't allow myself to criticize people. I'm not saying I don't criticize, but so I'm drawn to books like that. But usually it shows up in an excerpt here, a podcast here. I talk to people like you who have similar thought patterns. And then so I think it's more of a collaborative online bits here. I don't read full books today unless I'm listening to it and on the run. So that's it. It's just a very hodgepodge of LinkedIn and things that say adapt and change or die.
Adapt and change or die. Cool. Well, I think we've been going for a little while, and I know you got a business to run, but thanks for jumping on.
Hey, I look forward to we can get together at the next Roofing Alliance Ronald McDonald thing. And by the way, thank you. Fred Hill, the original founder of Ronald McDonald House Charities, lives with me in this county, and he's a good friend. And Fred, the last 3 times I've seen him, we serve on the board here together. He talks about you and Eagleview. He talks about you and meeting you and your big heart and your big smile and how handsome you are, which is just so awesome. In fact, I got to bring a tape and can him doing that just so I can blow up your ego a little bit. And he is, ex-Philadelphia football player. What's Philadelphia Fly?
Eagles.
Gosh, that was you gotta edit that part out.
No chance.
Damn.
No, thanks again, and to the listeners on the show. Thanks for watching, paying attention. Any comments you want to be on? Any complaints? Actually, I don't want any of those. Piers, Piers at riseoverrunpodcast.com. You could also find me on LinkedIn or check out Eagle View if you're looking to modernize your business and digitize your workflow.